Public-funded independent news network aiming to disrupt the mainstream media agenda. So we're sort of like a millennial network, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We're a team of over 100 and growing freelance journalists, bloggers, commentators, illustrators and news reporters. And TCS's mantra is #say what you need to say, which encourages raw, impassioned and honest debates of issues millennials care about. So today you want to say what you need to say. This is your chance to speak up and say what you feel.
Exactly. And the important thing about TCS is that we encourage debate. It's all right to disagree with each other. It might not necessarily seem like it in this day and age, but we will definitely encourage people to disagree with each other in a respectful manner. Can everyone say respectful, please? Respectful. Exactly, so that's the key, in a respectful manner. So, we can have a go at it now. It is World Cup season. Who's been watching the World Cup? Who's been following it? Yes? Make some noise about some of the teams that they think is going to win the World Cup. France, I'm hearing France. Who else? England? No? Anyone here? What teams? France? Is there anyone that doesn't think France is going to win the World Cup? Okay, over there. What team? Brazil. Okay, Neymar and the rest of them. Who else? Nigeria maybe? Yes, Nigeria might bring it home. No? Maybe? We're out. Okay, we're gone. So I'm going to ask a question, and I want to see by a show of hands, okay? By a show of hands. Who thinks it's coming home? If you know what it's coming home is, you know. If you know, okay, cool. You think it's coming home. Why do you think it's coming home? Because we're English, okay? We're English. Okay, that's even a debate in itself. Are we even English? We'll get to that another time. Who thinks it's not coming home? Put hands up. Cool. Well, why do you think it's coming home?
Well, it's not coming home. It's quite weak.
It's quite weak.
Yeah, it's quite weak.
In comparison to the other teams in the World Cup. So what we just did here was we had a friendly disagreement and we covered the debate. Okay, cool. So that's basically going to be the crux of what we're going to be doing today. Hopefully you guys enjoy yourself, get involved with the debate online and offline. So without further ado, we are going to have Lord Michael Hastings come and speak about why it is important for us to step outside of our echo chambers. Everyone give a round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Isn't it kind of fun that I get to come and share some introductory thoughts with you and that you can debate me when I leave you? Because you'll have the freedom to do that. But I'm conscious that TCS is attempting to be a very different kind of news organization. I thought I'd turn to a 175-year-old organ of news called The Economist. This is this week's edition. And then show you the advertisement from Facebook on the inside. How ironic is that? I thought that Facebook had billions of people within its grasp, but it wants to proclaim, as you can see from the advertisement, that it is being captured by fake news. So it needs to turn to an organ of authority that is 175 years old to communicate its problem. What does this tell us about how we handle difference? Conflict of conversation, people who are other than us, themes that are different to the way we think. I'm going to take you further back than 175 years to someone I'm sure that many of you will have studied. If you're studying history at all, you'll have heard of Machiavelli, who wrote in the 15th century. He was an Italian writer and thinker. And this is probably his most pertinent and important quote, Niccolo Machiavelli. There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. Nothing more difficult to do, nothing more perilous to conduct, nothing more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. That was said in the 15th century. You see, you think that millennials are all about change. How difficult it was then, how difficult it is now. Why do we find it difficult to change? All of us become rigid in our confirmed self-important views of how the world operates. Very often, those views are structured around a mix between ignorance and prejudice. And we sit there in the milieu mess of our own stuck thinking, unprepared to think beyond the box of where we've limited ourselves. I sit in the House of Lords. Some people find that a democratic aberration. I celebrate the fact that for the last 450 years, the elected House of Commons has attempted to overturn the unelected House of Lords and to eradicate our existence. So every time they make another attempt, we say, bring it on. We've had 400 years of waiting for the decision. Let's have another 400 years of perpetual and continuous debate. Here's one of the things that happens in the House of Lords, different to the House of Commons. When we debate, as we did on Thursday, about police and crime commissioners, when we debate, we put ourselves forward to speak, and then the whips between government and opposition structure a debate in a way that allows opposing views to bounce one to the other consistently through a 2.5-year period, 2.5-hour period. So we might think that what we have is a defined and clear view. And then within 5 minutes, someone else with the opposing perspective will paint a different picture altogether. And then we're back to where we thought we were, with a wrinkle to the side, and then someone else comes in with another thought. And then we go back again, and someone else. That is a fundamentally important part of our governance framework. It's why the Prime Minister submits him or herself to what has now become 45 minutes of Wednesday conversation. All the people who want to agree with you, the opposition who want to oppose you. In order to have effective governance, good government, and solid debate and thought, we must have opposition. It's radically important. In order that we reshape our thinking. Just a month ago, my son Kenny, who's there, who will be speaking later on, he and I were in Kenya together. We witnessed a remarkable event. We witnessed the President of Kenya, the Vice President of Kenya, apologize together in front of live television, the nation, and 2,000 people in a breakfast meeting to the leader of the opposition and to the former Vice President. Sworn enemies, opposing parties, radically different perspectives, a different vision for the nation. But they came together in apology, in repentance, in seeking forgiveness from each other, embracing, as the news media literally spun it underneath, hugs, not just handshakes. For the first time, African leaders saying sorry. Embracing difference and committing to a common vision for building the nation. Now the truth is, we didn't know that was going to happen. I've been asked to speak to this major breakfast event, which included the President, the Vice President, the President of Somalia, and of course the opposition leaders on a different table. But I didn't know what the outcome of this was going to be. But witnessing the power of collective embraced forgiveness is a transformative experience. Difference is vital. Forgiveness, acceptance is the next stage. Strong views come from people with clear thoughts. So to define how we should think is then to understand the need to embrace someone else's wisdom. My brother's a scientist. He told me that the heart of a real scientist, the mind of a real scientist, is never to come to a conclusion. There is always another thing to discover. You know what people say these days? It's a fact that, referring to scientific outcomes, inquiry or thought. It's never a fact that. Because the process of transformation means that the facts change. And we must change with them. That way we can embrace difference. I lived through the period of the 1970s. I witnessed a different kind of terrorism to what you've been accustomed to. You've heard of ISIS, of Al-Qaeda. You've thought of Middle Eastern-based terrorism. I lived through Northern Irish terrorism. I remember the bombings in Manchester and in London and in Belfast. I went to walk down the Falls Road, the division between the Catholic one side and the Protestant the other side, or the Republicans on the one side and the Unionists on the other side, depending how you want to see it. When a friend and I walked down the Falls Road in 1974, we were told we probably wouldn't make it to the end of the 1 mile walk. Very few people do. The reality of that conflict was severe. The two sides would not meet with each other. And Britain suffered. The possible bombing, the possible collapse of the Channel Tunnel was one of the most driving factors that forced the Thatcher government and then the major governments to move towards conflict conversation. Just last year, Martin McGuinness died. I always rated him as a hero. I thought he was a great man of character. He was supposed to have been, and I don't know the defining facts, but he was supposed to have been the leader of the Provisional IRA. He was supposed to have been the man who was the architect of multiple killings and crimes in Northern Ireland. He's supposed to have been the man who signed off the end of lives for multitudes of those who opposed the Republican vision. On the other side was Ian Paisley. Ian Paisley MP is now the son of Ian Paisley, the famous big burly, bear-like political leader. I had to interview Ian Paisley on many occasions when I was a television journalist. I always found that he could give over such impassioned aggression within his words. He was captivating by his anger. He always described the other side as the shinners. And because he was a preacher, he switched from shinners to sinners in the same breath. And those of us who lived through the 70s and the 80s, we wondered whether we'd ever see the end of Northern Irish terrorism. You haven't seen it. You've seen the end, but not the beginning. But what you've witnessed is a peace that came about when two opposing forces of the most extreme positions, architects of death on both sides, found one another, sat together, shared complicated thoughts and different perspectives, and peace could be born in the hearts of aggressive men who before that had found every conceivable way to bomb, to kill, and to destroy. The art of real thought is to know what both multiple sides of an argument are, and to develop our thinking consistently so that we can actually fulfill the dream that Machiavelli had, to change things because we're willing to think differently, to embrace things we don't like, to think of others' perspectives we don't enjoy. So, on the 13th of July, Donald Trump will come to Britain. The forces of aggression will mount. The Twitter stream will become vindictive. People will have much to say. This is the same man who just 2 weeks ago met the president chairman of North Korea. In a move no one predicted possible. I cannot be a fan of Donald Trump or Kim Jong-un, but asked to meet them to discuss the changes needed for our communities and our world, I better do. Simply to oppose, to stand aside, to remove yourself from the argument, to get out of the way of logical thinking is to say you will never come to a place where contentment and collaboration and cooperation can bring peace for others. You'll stand your ground on your harsh opinion and die with it. So to be a change maker, a newsmaker of the future, is to be a peace broker. It means to hold opposing views in heart and mind, not to be in conflict by dividing, but to embrace the other with equal rigor. I remember, and I conclude with this, when I first went in 2007 to Islamabad, I was invited by an Islamic political group to attend a conference in Islamabad. I was happy to go because I trusted the people involved. When I arrived, I was whisked away to a separate place in a separate car to find myself put up in a building adjacent to the president's palace. Having done that, I was then invited as an intimate follower of Jesus to speak to those young Islamic leaders in a conference that was public, open, and available for discussion. They were not afraid of me, and I was not afraid of them. But before I went, the panic stream of problems that people laid on my back about engaging with different perspectives that others didn't want to embrace caused me pressure. But what I wanted to do instead was to hold the hand of someone so different, from such a different place to me, that we could find a common sense network together. And that is what we did. And I wish you well in the